The prison yard at Riverside Correctional stretched 200 feet in every direction, enclosed by concrete walls that rose 30 feet high. Chain-link fences topped with razor wire caught the afternoon sun, casting sharp shadows across the asphalt. 300 men moved through this space during recreation hours, forming clusters that shifted and reformed according to invisible rules established over decades. Marcus Chen arrived on a Tuesday morning in late September. 23 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighing 140 pounds. His paperwork said 18 months for aggravated assault, but the story behind those words remained his own. The intake guards processed him through 5 checkpoints, stripped him of his civilian identity, and assigned him to cell block D. The guards who walked him to his cell said nothing about survival. They had seen hundreds of new inmates, and they knew which ones would adapt and which ones would break. Marcus carried himself differently than most arrivals. He did not scan the corridors with wide eyes. He did not flinch when metal doors slammed. He simply walked, observing everything while revealing nothing. Cell block D housed 200 men across 3 tiers. The noise hit first, a constant wall of sound composed of voices, footsteps, clanging metal, and occasional shouts. The smell came second, a mixture of industrial cleaner, sweat, and something indefinable that accumulated in places where too many people lived too close together. Marcus filed these details away, without comment. His cellmate was assigned before he arrived. Raymond Davis, 41 years old, serving his 6th year of a 12-year sentence. Raymond sat on the lower bunk reading a worn paperback when Marcus entered. He looked up briefly, assessed the new arrival in 3 seconds, and returned to his book without speaking. Marcus took the upper bunk. He organized his few possessions in the small metal locker. He made his bed with precise corners. Raymond watched this routine from his peripheral vision, noting the efficiency and discipline in these simple actions. That first night, Raymond finally spoke. His voice carried the rough edges of someone who had learned to communicate in hard places. "You military?" Marcus finished folding a shirt before answering. "No." "You move like it." Marcus said nothing. Raymond closed his book. "Listen, tomorrow you go to the yard for the first time. There are things you need to understand." Marcus climbed onto his bunk and lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. "I will figure it out." "Maybe, but figuring it out the hard way costs more than you want to pay." The morning bell rang at 6. Breakfast happened in shifts, 200 men filing through the cafeteria in organized chaos. Marcus moved through the line, selected his food, and found an empty section of table. He ate methodically, aware of the eyes tracking him, but not acknowledging them. The yard opened at 9. 300 men poured through 4 access points, dispersing across the space according to established territories. The weightlifting area occupied the northwest corner. The basketball court stretched along the eastern wall. Card tables and benches filled the center. The southern section remained mostly empty, a buffer zone between competing groups. Marcus walked onto the asphalt and immediately understood the geography. Every square foot belonged to someone. Every bench, every table, every shadow had been claimed. New arrivals either found protection or faced pressure until they bent or broke. 3 men noticed him within 30 seconds. They stood near the weight benches, wearing the casual confidence of people who controlled their environment. The leader was called Trent, a name that carried weight in cell block D. 6 feet 2 inches, 220 pounds, covered in tattoos that documented his history. His 2 companions flanked him like satellites, always present but never quite equal. Trent watched Marcus walk across the open space with no apparent destination. He smiled, the expression containing no warmth whatsoever. "Look at this. Fresh meat." His companions laughed on cue. Other inmates nearby turned to watch. The yard operated on predictable patterns, and everyone recognized this moment. A new inmate. Alone. Unaffiliated. This was how hierarchies were established and maintained. Marcus continued walking. He surveyed the perimeter, counted the guard towers, noted the camera positions, and identified the blind spots. His face showed no concern about the attention he was drawing. Trent moved to intercept him, his 2 companions falling into position. They blocked Marcus's path near the center of the yard, where 50 inmates could witness what happened next. "You lost, little man." Marcus stopped. He looked at Trent without speaking. "I asked you a question." "I heard you." Trent's smile widened. "You got a smart mouth. That is going to be a problem." Marcus remained still. His body language showed neither aggression nor fear. He simply stood there, present and aware. "This kid will not last a week," Trent announced to the watching crowd. Laughter rippled outward. "Look at him. Probably cries himself to sleep every night." Marcus still said nothing. He was calculating distances, measuring reactions, building a mental map of social dynamics based on who laughed and who stayed quiet. Trent stepped closer, entering Marcus's personal space deliberately. This was the test. Most new inmates would either back down or lash out. Backing down meant accepting a subordinate position. Lashing out meant starting a fight they could not win, not with 3-to-1 odds and guards watching. Marcus did neither. He held his ground without escalating, his eyes locked on Trent's face. "You deaf, boy?" "No." "Then answer when I talk to you." "You lost?" "No." Trent's expression shifted slightly. Most inmates either cowered or postured. This one was doing something different, something that did not fit the usual patterns. "What cell block?" "D. Tier 3. Cell 47. Trent processed this information. Cell 47 meant Raymond Davis was the cellmate. Raymond had a reputation for staying neutral, for not affiliating with any particular group. That gave no clues about Marcus's potential connections. "You got someone backing you in here?" "No." The honesty surprised some watchers. Most new inmates claimed connections whether they had them or not, hoping the bluff would buy time. "No?" Trent laughed again. "Then you got a big problem." Marcus finally moved. He took one step to the right, creating an angle that put him closer to the wall and forced Trent's companions to adjust their positions. It was a subtle shift that changed the geometry of the confrontation. "I do not want problems," Marcus said quietly. "Too late. You are already in the middle of one." The guards in Tower 3 were watching now. They would not intervene unless violence erupted, but their attention meant this could not escalate beyond certain boundaries. Trent knew this. Marcus knew this. The dance continued within understood limits. "Here is how this works," Trent said. "You want to survive in here, you need protection. Protection costs. Every week you pay. Miss a payment and bad things happen. Understand?" Marcus understood perfectly. This was the extortion system that operated in every prison. Weak inmates paid stronger ones for the privilege of not being targeted. The payments were small enough to be sustainable, large enough to be degrading. "What if I refuse?" The question hung in the air. Several nearby inmates stopped their conversations to listen. Trent's smile disappeared. "Nobody refuses." "I am refusing." The crowd grew silent. Even the basketball game on the far court paused as word spread. A new inmate, alone, refusing protection from Trent. This was either incredible courage or incredible stupidity. Trent's right hand formed a fist. His companions moved closer, tightening the circle. Marcus tracked all three simultaneously, his weight balanced, his breathing steady. "You just made a very bad choice," Trent said. "Maybe." "Not maybe. Definitely. You just signed up for a world of hurt." Marcus said nothing. He had delivered his message. Now he would accept the consequences. Trent stepped back, creating space. "This kid thinks he is tough. Let us see how tough he is when we catch him alone, without guards watching, without cameras." The threat was clear. Violence would come later, in a moment carefully chosen to avoid official attention. Marcus nodded slightly, acknowledging he understood. "1 week," Trent continued. "That is what I said, and that is what I meant. This kid will not last a week." The confrontation ended without physical contact. Trent walked back to the wait area, his companions following. The crowd dispersed slowly, conversations resuming but focused entirely on what just happened. Marcus continued his walk around the perimeter. He had learned what he needed to learn. Trent controlled the yard through intimidation and violence. His crew numbered approximately 12 men, spread across 2 cell blocks. They operated openly, because the guards either could not stop them or chose not to try. Opposing them meant facing coordinated retaliation. Raymond found Marcus 20 minutes later, standing alone near the southern wall. "I told you to listen." Marcus turned. "I listened." "Then you are even dumber than you look. Trent runs this place. You just made yourself his #1 target." "I know." Raymond studied him carefully. "You have a death wish?" "No." "Then what are you doing?" Marcus watched the yard in silence. Men moved through their routines, lifting weights, playing cards, trading contraband in plain sight. The guards watched from their towers. present but distant. This was an ecosystem with its own rules, its own predators, its own prey. "I am not prey," Marcus finally said. Raymond shook his head. "Everyone is prey in here, unless they have backing. You got no crew, no connections, and now you pissed off the most dangerous man in cell block D. That is not being brave. That is being suicidal." Marcus returned to his cell when recreation ended. He spent the afternoon reading, exercising, and thinking. His mind worked through scenarios, calculating probabilities, considering responses to various attacks. He had trained for situations like this, though the context had been different. Dinner passed without incident. Trent and his crew sat at their usual table, laughing and talking. They ignored Marcus completely, which was more concerning than open hostility. Ignoring meant planning. That night, Raymond tried again. "Look, I have stayed neutral for 6 years. I do not join crews, I do not pick sides, and I do not get involved in yard politics. That is how I survive." Marcus lay on his bunk, listening. "But you are my cellmate now. If they come after you, it affects me, so I am going to give you one more piece of advice. Go to Trent tomorrow, apologize, pay whatever he asks, swallow your pride and live." "No." "Why not?" "Because it does not end there. Pay once, you pay forever. Submit once, you are marked as someone who submits. I would rather face the consequences now than accept that life." Raymond was quiet for a long moment. "You really are not afraid, are you?" "I am afraid. But fear does not change what I need to do." The next morning began the same way. Breakfast. The yard. 300 men moving through familiar patterns. Marcus walked to an empty bench and sat down, his back to the wall, his eyes scanning constantly. Trent made him wait. That was part of the psychology. Let the target worry, let the anticipation build. Strike when the moment was right. 2 days passed, then 3. Marcus maintained his routine. He exercised. He read. He spoke to no one except Raymond. Other inmates began to notice his isolation, his apparent calm in the face of the coming storm. On the 4th day, Trent's crew made their first move. It happened during recreation, in the northwest corner near the weights. Marcus was walking past when one of Trent's men, a thick-necked inmate called Booker, stepped directly into his path. "Excuse me," Marcus said. Booker did not move. 2 other crew members appeared, boxing Marcus in against the wall. Guards in Tower 2 watched but did not react. This was posturing, not violence, not yet. "Trent wants to know if you changed your mind," Booker said. "No. He thought you might say that." Booker cracked his knuckles slowly. "So here is what happens next. Tomorrow during rec, you and me are going to have a conversation. A physical conversation. If you are still standing when it ends, maybe we leave you alone for a while. If you are not standing, well, that is your problem." Marcus understood. This was the escalation. A sanctioned fight, witnessed but not stopped by guards. Win and earn temporary respite. Lose and face worse treatment. "Tomorrow," Marcus confirmed. "Tomorrow." The crew members dispersed. Word spread through the yard within minutes. Booker versus the new kid. Booker outweighed Marcus by 80 pounds and had a reputation for brutal efficiency. The betting started immediately, and nobody was taking Marcus's side. Raymond was furious when he found out. "You could have walked away, you could have avoided this." "No, I could not." "Why not?" "Because walking away means looking weak. Fighting means I might be dangerous. Even if I lose, I hurt him. That changes how they see me." "You are going to get destroyed." Marcus shrugged. "Probably." That evening, Marcus did not prepare by exercising or psyching himself up. He sat quietly, his mind running through techniques he had learned years ago in a different context. Pressure points, weak areas, how to maximize damage when outweighed and outmatched. Raymond watched him with growing confusion. "You are not nervous at all. Being nervous does not help. What did you do before you came here?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I solved problems." The next morning arrived, the yard filled with anticipation. Men positioned themselves for optimal viewing. Guards increased their presence, knowing something was planned but allowing it within certain boundaries. Marcus walked onto the asphalt at exactly 9:15. Booker was already waiting in the northwest corner, surrounded by Trent's full crew. 50 inmates formed a loose circle, creating an impromptu arena. Marcus crossed the yard slowly. His heart rate was elevated but controlled. His breathing remained steady. He had been in situations like this before, where violence was inevitable and preparation meant the difference between survival and disaster. He entered the circle. Booker smiled, rolling his massive shoulders. "Last chance to apologize," Trent called out from the edge. "Take your beating, pay your debt, and we move on." Marcus ignored him. His entire focus was on Booker, on the way the larger man distributed his weight, on the slight favor he showed his right side, on the old injury visible in how he rotated his left shoulder. Booker moved first. He was fast for his size, closing the distance with his right fist already swinging. Marcus did not try to block or dodge backwards. Instead, he stepped inside the punch, turning his body so Booker's arm passed over his shoulder. His own right hand shot forward, fingers extended, striking Booker's throat just below the Adam's apple. Booker stumbled backward, gagging. The crowd went silent. That was not how this was supposed to go. Marcus did not pause. He drove his knee into Booker's right quadriceps, hitting the nerve cluster that would temporarily deaden the leg. Booker's knee buckled. Marcus pivoted, his elbow connecting with Booker's temple as the larger man fell forward. Booker hit the asphalt face first. 10 seconds had elapsed since the first punch. The silence was absolute. 50 inmates stared at the scene. Booker lay on the ground, conscious but disoriented, blood streaming from his nose. Marcus stood over him, not celebrating, not posturing, simply ready in case the fight continued. It did not. Booker tried to rise and fell again. His right leg would not support his weight. His throat was swelling, making each breath a struggle. Trent pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. What the hell was that? Marcus turned to face him, his hands loose at his sides, his expression neutral. "A physical conversation," Marcus said quietly, like he promised. Trent looked at Booker, then at Marcus, then at his crew. His reputation had just taken a massive hit. The new kid, the one who was not supposed to last a week, had just destroyed one of his best fighters in less than 15 seconds. "You got lucky," Trent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe." 2 guards appeared at the edge of the circle. "Break it up. Everyone back to your areas." The crowd dispersed reluctantly. Booker was helped to his feet by 2 crew members, limping badly. Marcus walked away without looking back, his heart still pounding but his exterior perfectly calm. Raymond was waiting near the cell block entrance, his eyes wide. "What the hell are you?" Marcus did not answer. He returned to his cell, washed his hands, and lay on his bunk. His right hand ached where he had struck Booker's throat. His knee throbbed from the impact, but he had accomplished what he needed to accomplish. The story spread through 3 cell blocks within an hour. Details became exaggerated, but the core facts remained. The new kid destroyed Booker in seconds, using techniques nobody had seen before. Speculation ran wild about Marcus's background. That afternoon, the dynamic in the yard shifted. Inmates who had ignored Marcus now watched him with calculation. Trent's crew maintained distance, regrouping around their wounded pride. Marcus had not won, not yet, but he had changed the equation. Raymond spoke that night with new respect in his voice. "Military training?" "Something like that. You could have told me. Would it have changed anything?" Raymond considered this. "No, I guess not." 2 days passed. Marcus maintained his routine, aware that his victory over Booker had bought time but not safety. Trent would not let this stand. The response would come, and it would be calculated to restore his authority. On the 7th day, exactly 1 week after Marcus's arrival, Trent made his move. It happened during lunch in the cafeteria, where 300 men ate in organized chaos. Marcus was halfway through his meal when he sensed the shift in atmosphere. Conversations dropped to whispers. Men at nearby tables suddenly found reasons to move elsewhere. The guards at the entrance seemed to look away at precisely the wrong moment. Trent approached with his full crew, 8 men forming a wall of muscle and menace. They surrounded Marcus's table, blocking every exit. The cafeteria was not like the yard. There were weapons here, improvised but deadly. Plastic trays could be sharpened, metal forks could puncture, and there were far fewer cameras. Trent sat down across from Marcus, his movements deliberate and theatrical. "We need to talk." Marcus continued eating, his eyes tracking every crew member's position without appearing to look at any of them directly. "You embarrassed me," Trent continued. "You embarrassed Booker, that cannot stand." Marcus finished chewing before responding. "I did not start anything. I just refused to pay. That is starting something. In here, Saying no to me is the same as spitting in my face." The crew members leaned in closer. Two of them had their hands in their pockets, clearly gripping something. Marcus noted their positions, calculated the angles, measured his chances. They were not good. "So here is what happens now," Trent said. "You pay double what I originally asked every week for the rest of your sentence, and you publicly apologize for what you did to Booker. Do that, and maybe I let you live." Marcus set down his fork carefully. "And if I refuse again?" Trent's smile was cold. "Then you do not leave this cafeteria on your feet. We will make it look like a fight. Guards will arrive too late. By the time medical gets here, you will be halfway to the hospital. If you are lucky." The threat was real. Marcus could see it in the crew's body language, in the way they had positioned themselves for maximum violence with minimum witness interference. This was the moment Trent had been building toward. Public submission or brutal retaliation. Marcus looked around the cafeteria. 200 men were watching, pretending not to watch. This was theater, a performance designed to reinforce Trent's authority. Win here, and Trent's power would be unquestioned. Lose here, and the entire social structure would shift. "No," Marcus said quietly. Trent's expression hardened. "You really are stupid. Maybe, but I am not yours." The crew moved instantly. Two grabbed Marcus's arms, while a third drove his fist toward Marcus's face. But Marcus had been ready since the moment Trent sat down. He drove his head forward, smashing his forehead into the nose of the man in front of him. The grip on his right arm loosened. He wrenched free, grabbed the plastic tray from his table, and swung it in a wide arc that caught another crew member across the temple. Chaos erupted. The cafeteria exploded into motion as 300 inmates reacted to the sudden violence. Some surged forward to watch. Others scattered to avoid being caught in the expanding brawl. Guards rushed from their positions, whistles blaring, but they were too far away to stop what was already happening. Marcus fought with calculated precision. Every movement served a purpose. He did not try to win, because winning was impossible against 8 men. He tried to survive, to inflict enough damage that continuing would cost too much. A fist caught his ribs. He absorbed the blow and drove his elbow backward into someone's solar plexus. A kick swept his legs. He rolled with the momentum, coming up with a metal chair that he swung into the nearest attacker's knees. Bodies pressed in from all sides. Fists connected with his face, his back, his stomach. But he kept moving, kept striking, kept making them pay for every inch. Trent himself finally entered the fight. He was bigger, stronger, and fueled by rage at this continued defiance. His first punch caught Marcus across the jaw, snapping his head sideways. His second drove into Marcus's kidney, sending white-hot pain through his body. Marcus dropped to one knee, blood streaming from his nose. Trent loomed over him, breathing hard, his fists raised for the finishing blow. Then Raymond was there. Marcus's cellmate had crossed the cafeteria at a dead run, crashing into Trent's side with the full force of his body. The two men went down in a tangle of limbs. 2 more inmates Marcus did not recognize joined the fight, pulling crew members away. The situation spiraled beyond anyone's control. Guards arrived with batons and pepper spray. They waded into the mass of bodies, striking indiscriminately, separating fighters with overwhelming force. Within 90 seconds, the fight was over. 20 men lay on the floor in various states of consciousness. Blood splattered the tables and the walls. Overturned trays covered the floor with food. Marcus was pulled to his feet by 2 guards. His left eye was already swelling shut. His lip was split. His ribs screamed with every breath. But he had remained conscious throughout, and that mattered. Trent was hauled up by 3 guards. His face was a mask of blood from where Raymond had broken his nose. His right hand hung at an odd angle, possibly fractured, but his eyes locked onto Marcus with pure hatred. "This is not over," Trent spat through broken teeth. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing left to say. They took him to the medical unit, a sterile white room where a bored nurse catalogued his injuries with practiced efficiency. Cracked rib, probable concussion, multiple contusions, lacerations requiring stitches. Nothing life-threatening, nothing unusual for a prison fight. "You are lucky," the nurse said while cleaning the cut above his eye. "I have seen much worse." Marcus did not feel lucky. He felt like every nerve in his body was on fire. Raymond arrived 20 minutes later, escorted by a single guard. He had his own collection of bruises, but nothing serious. The guard stepped outside, giving them a moment of privacy. "Why did you help me?" Marcus asked. Raymond shrugged, wincing at the motion. 6 years I stayed neutral. 6 years I watched men get beaten, extorted, broken. Told myself it was not my problem. Then you showed up and did something I never had the guts to do. You said no. So when the moment came, I made a choice. That choice could cost you everything. I know, but staying neutral was costing me something too. Just took me 6 years to figure that out. They put Marcus in solitary confinement for 72 hours. Standard procedure after a major fight. The cell was 8 feet by 10 feet, containing a concrete bed, a toilet, and nothing else. No windows, no books, no contact with anyone except the guard who brought meals 3 times a day. Marcus used the time to think. The fight had changed the dynamics irrevocably. He had proven he would not submit, even at great personal cost. That earned respect from some inmates and intensified hatred from others. Trent would not forgive this. The war had begun, and it would continue until one side surrendered or was destroyed. On the 4th day, they returned him to cell block D. The reaction was immediate and obvious. Men who had ignored him before now nodded in acknowledgement as he passed. Others openly stared with newfound respect. A few offered quiet words of support, but Trent's crew maintained their distance, watching with cold calculation. 4 of them had been placed in segregation for their role in the cafeteria fight. Trent himself was in the medical unit for another 2 days, his hand in a cast, his face still swollen. Raymond greeted Marcus at their cell with a strange expression. "You need to see something." He led Marcus to the day room, where 30 inmates were gathered around a bulletin board. They parted to let Marcus through. Someone had posted a hand-drawn cartoon showing a small figure standing over a giant's body. The caption read, "1 week." Marcus stared at the image. Someone had turned his conflict with Trent into mythology, spreading it through the entire cell block. This was how reputations were built in places like this. Not through official records or objective facts, but through stories that grew with each retelling. "You are famous now," Raymond said, "or infamous, depending on how you look at it." Over the next week, the yard equilibrium shifted in subtle ways. Trent's crew maintained their territory, but their movements were more cautious. Other groups sensed weakness and tested boundaries that had been unchallenged for months. Small confrontations erupted and resolved without Trent's direct intervention. Marcus noticed inmates approaching him with questions, with stories, with requests. A young prisoner named Danny asked for advice on handling pressure from another crew. An older inmate called Wallace offered to teach him the card games that dominated the yard. Even men who stayed neutral before now acknowledged his presence. He had not sought this attention. He had simply refused to accept one man's authority over his life. But in doing so, he had become something else. A symbol, a possibility, proof that the established order could be challenged. 2 weeks after the cafeteria fight, Trent returned to the yard. His hand remained in a cast, limiting his physical options, but his presence still commanded attention. The crew gathered around him immediately, their body language deferential and protective. Marcus watched from across the yard. Their eyes met across the distance. Neither man looked away. This was not over. Both of them knew it. That afternoon, Raymond received a message through the prison's informal communication network. Someone wanted to meet with Marcus. Someone important. "Who?" Marcus asked. "Goes by the name Carlos, runs cell block C. He has been here 14 years and controls more of this prison than any single person. If Carlos wants to talk, you talk." They arranged the meeting for the next recreation period, in the neutral zone near the southern wall. Carlos arrived with 2 associates, both relaxed but alert. He was 53 years old, medium height, with grey threading through his hair and scars documenting a violent past. He studied Marcus for a long moment before speaking. "I have been watching you. Everyone has been watching you." Marcus waited. "You did something most men here never do. You stood up to Trent. That takes either great courage or great stupidity." "Maybe both," Marcus said. Carlos smiled slightly. "Maybe. But you also did it smart. You did not challenge him publicly until you had no choice. You did not make it about pride or territory. You just refused to submit. That is different. What do you want? Direct. I like that." Carlos gestured to the yard around them. "This place operates on balance. Different groups control different spaces, different resources. Trent had the largest crew in cell block D, had too much power, was getting sloppy. You knocked him down several levels. That changes the balance." Marcus understood. "You want to use me?" I want to propose a partnership. You have proven you can fight. You have earned respect. But you are alone, and alone does not survive long-term in here. Join my organization. Protection, resources, status. In exchange, you help maintain order in Cell Block D. And if I refuse, Carlos's expression did not change, then you stay alone. Maybe you survive, maybe you do not. But the offer stands for 48 hours. After that, you are on your own. Marcus considered the proposition. Carlos was offering exactly what Trent had tried to force. The difference was the presentation, the respect implicit in asking rather than demanding. But the result was the same. Surrender independence for safety. I need to think about it. Carlos nodded. 48 hours. But understand something. Trent will come for you again. Next time will not be a public fight. Next time will be an accident. A fall in the shower. A fire in your cell. Something the guards cannot stop because they will not see it coming. You need allies. The meeting ended. Marcus returned to his cell, his mind working through possibilities and consequences. Raymond was waiting with obvious curiosity. What did he offer? Marcus explained the proposal. Raymond whistled softly. Carlos does not make offers lightly. If he wants you, it means you have real value. But it also means you become part of his organization. Your actions affect him. His enemies become your enemies. What would you do? Raymond was quiet for a long time. 6 months ago, I would have said take the deal. Safety is precious in here. But watching you these past weeks changed something for me. Maybe independence is worth the risk. That night, Marcus lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. Every option carried costs. Join Carlos and gain protection but lose autonomy. Stay independent and face continued threats from Trent. Try to build his own network, which would take months, and paint an even larger target on his back. The next morning brought new information. Danny, the young inmate who had asked for advice, appeared during breakfast looking terrified. He pulled Marcus aside with shaking hands. Trent's crew grabbed me yesterday. Said they know I talked to you. Said I need to give them information about what you are planning or they will hurt me. Marcus studied the younger man's face. What did you tell them? Nothing. I do not know anything. But they did not believe me. They said I have until tomorrow to bring them something useful. This was the leverage Trent was building. Unable to attack Marcus directly without severe consequences, he was targeting anyone who showed association with him. Isolate the threat by making contact dangerous. Marcus made a decision. Tell them I am meeting Carlos again tonight, in the same spot. They will want to know about that. Danny's eyes widened. That will put you in danger. It will put me exactly where I need to be. That afternoon, Marcus approached Carlos during recreation. I need to change our timeline. I want to meet again tonight, same location. Carlos raised an eyebrow. That is not the deal. You have 48 hours to decide. I have decided, but I need to handle something first. Meet me there at 8 o'clock. Come alone if you trust me. Come with your crew if you do not. Carlos studied Marcus's face, reading the intention behind the request. A slow smile spread across his features. You are going to do something interesting. Maybe. 8 o'clock. Word spread through Danny to Trent's crew. A meeting between Marcus and Carlos. Tonight, in the neutral zone. This was the opportunity Trent had been waiting for. Catch Marcus in a vulnerable position, away from witnesses, with plausible deniability about what happened. Raymond figured out Marcus's plan within hours. You are using yourself as bait. Yes, that is insane. That is necessary. Trent will not stop until he wins, or I am gone. This ends it one way or another. At 7:45, Marcus left Cell Block D alone. The yard was mostly empty, recreation having ended an hour earlier. Only a few inmates remained in authorized areas. Guards patrolled their regular routes, visible but distant. Marcus walked to the southern wall and waited. The air had cooled with the setting sun. Shadows stretched across the asphalt. He stood in the open, deliberately exposed, his senses extended for any sign of approach. Trent's crew arrived at 7:50. 6 men moving through the darkness with practiced silence. They thought they were invisible. They were not. Marcus had positioned himself where the last light from Tower 4 would illuminate anyone approaching from the east. They spread out, attempting to surround him. Marcus remained still, letting them think they had the advantage. His heart rate elevated but remained controlled. His breathing stayed steady. This was what he had been trained for, though the context had been different. When they were 10 feet away, Marcus spoke clearly. "Stop there." The crew froze, surprised he had detected them. "You can walk away now," Marcus continued, "or you can keep coming and see what happens." Trent himself stepped forward from the shadows. His hand was still in a cast, but his left hand held something metallic that caught the fading light, a sharpened piece of metal, prison-made but deadly. "You really think you can take all of us?" "No," Marcus admitted, "but I will take you first. That shiv goes into my body, my fist goes through your throat. We both end up in medical, maybe worse. Is that what you want?" Trent hesitated. This was not the response he expected. Most victims begged or tried to run. Marcus was negotiating the terms of his own stabbing. "Or," Marcus continued, "you can listen to what I came here to say." "Why would I listen to anything you have to say?" "Because Carlos is watching us right now. And what you do in the next 60 seconds determines whether you leave this yard intact or in pieces." Trent's eyes flickered to the shadows. He could not see Carlos, but he knew Marcus was not bluffing. Carlos would not miss this confrontation. The question was whose side he would take. "You set us up," Trent said slowly. "I gave you a choice. You chose to come with weapons and violence. That choice has consequences." Carlos emerged from the darkness near the western wall, his 2 associates flanking him. They moved with casual confidence, not rushing but clearly present. "Trent," Carlos said calmly, "put down the shiv. This is not your business. Everything in this prison is my business, you know that. Now put it down before you make a mistake that costs more than you want to pay." The mathematics shifted instantly. Trent's crew could overwhelm Marcus. They could probably fight Carlos's 2 associates, but they could not win against Carlos himself, who had connections throughout 4 cell blocks, and the implicit backing of guards who found his organization useful for maintaining order. Trent lowered the shiv slowly. "This is not over." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "It is." Trent stared at him with pure hatred. "You think Carlos will protect you forever? You think joining his crew makes you untouchable?" "I am not joining his crew." The statement hung in the air. Everyone present understood its significance. Marcus had used Carlos's presence to neutralize Trent's threat, but he was not accepting Carlos's protection. He was operating independently, something almost nobody did successfully in this environment. Carlos laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and appreciation. "You used me. I gave you information about a developing situation. What you did with that information was your choice. And now? Now Trent understands that coming after me means dealing with complications beyond just me. That changes his calculation. He can walk away or he can keep pushing. Either way, I am not paying tribute, and I am not submitting." Trent's face twisted with rage and frustration. He had been outmaneuvered completely. Attack Marcus now, and face Carlos's retaliation. Walk away and admit defeat in front of witnesses. There was no good option. 48 hours, Carlos reminded Marcus. "The offer expires then." "I know." Carlos nodded to his associates and they melted back into the shadows. Trent and his crew remained frozen, unwilling to retreat but unable to advance. Marcus finally moved. He walked past Trent's crew without hurrying, his eyes forward, his body language showing neither fear nor aggression. When he reached the entrance to cell block D, he allowed himself a single glance backward. Trent was still standing in the same spot, the shiv dangling from his hand, his crew surrounding him with uncertain expressions. The encounter had stripped away his aura of invincibility. Everyone had seen it. Word would spread through 3 cell blocks by morning. Raymond was pacing their cell when Marcus returned. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" "No, I'm trying to survive on my own terms." "By making enemies of everyone?" Marcus sat on his bunk, his body finally registering the adrenaline crash. "I did not make Carlos an enemy. I showed him I can think strategically. That has value to someone like him. And Trent was already my enemy. Tonight just ended the uncertainty." "Ended it how?" "He cannot attack me openly without consequences. He cannot use his crew to isolate me because people will see it coming. His options are limited now. He either accepts the new reality or he escalates to something that will get him sent to maximum security. Either way, the immediate threat is reduced." Raymond shook his head slowly. "You are either the smartest person in this place or the craziest. I honestly cannot tell which. Maybe both." The next morning confirmed Marcus's assessment. Inmates throughout cell block D treated him with new respect. Not fear, but acknowledgement of someone who had navigated impossible situations through intelligence and courage. Conversations stopped when he passed, but they stopped with interest rather than hostility. Trent's crew maintained their distance. They still controlled their territory, still operated their various enterprises, but they did not approach Marcus. The silent war had reached a stalemate. Carlos found Marcus in the library 2 days later, exactly 48 hours after their first meeting. "Your time is up. What is your answer?" Marcus closed the book he had been reading. "Thank you for the offer. I decline." Carlos sat down across from him. "You realize you are throwing away protection, resources, and status. For what? Pride? For independence. I came here because I made mistakes. I will not compound those mistakes by surrendering my autonomy to survive." That is a nice speech, but speeches do not stop knives in the dark. Neither does membership in an organization. If someone wants me dead badly enough, they will find a way regardless of whose crew I join. At least this way, I know I stayed true to myself. Carlos leaned back, studying Marcus with something like respect. "You really are different. Most men break eventually. They find a group, submit to a leader, and disappear into the mass. You refuse to disappear. I refuse to accept that survival requires submission." Philosophical, but this is prison, not philosophy class. Reality is harder than principles. "I know, I will deal with reality as it comes." Carlos stood to leave. "You have earned something rare in here, my respect. That does not mean protection, but it means I will not work against you, and if you ever change your mind, the offer remains open." "Thank you." After Carlos left, Marcus returned to his reading. He had completed 3 weeks in a place where he was supposed to last less than 1. He had faced physical violence, psychological pressure, and strategic manipulation. He had made enemies and earned respect, but most importantly, he had maintained his independence. Raymond appeared an hour later. "I heard Carlos left empty-handed." "Yes. You really are committed to this path." "I am committed to being myself, even here, especially here." Raymond sat down beside him. "Then I have a proposal. Not a crew, not an organization, just 2 cellmates watching each other's backs. No hierarchy, no obligations beyond basic trust. What do you say?" Marcus looked at his cellmate, seeing the transformation that had occurred over 3 weeks. Raymond had gone from cautious neutrality to active participation, from isolated survival to chosen alliance. "I say yes." They shook hands, a simple gesture that carried weight in this environment. They were not forming a crew or claiming territory. They were establishing a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. Over the following weeks, others approached with similar sentiments. Danny, the young inmate Trent had tried to pressure, asked to eat lunch with them. Wallace, the older card player, offered to share his table during recreation. 3 more inmates from Cell Block D expressed interest in forming a loose association, not for power, but for mutual support. Marcus had not sought to build anything. He had simply insisted on his own autonomy, but in doing so, he had created an alternative to the traditional crew structure, a network based on choice rather than coercion, on respect rather than fear. Trent watched this development with growing frustration. His crew remained the largest and most powerful in Cell Block D, but their influence had been checked. Inmates who once paid tribute out of fear now had alternatives. The absolute authority he had enjoyed was fragmenting. 1 month after Marcus's arrival, a major incident shifted the yard dynamics permanently. A fight erupted between 2 rival crews near the basketball courts. It escalated rapidly, drawing in 30 inmates. Guards responded with overwhelming force, locking down the entire facility for 72 hours. During the lockdown, investigations revealed that Trent's crew had been involved in smuggling contraband into the prison, using violence to control distribution. Evidence traced directly to Trent himself. The administration transferred him to a maximum security facility 200 miles away. His departure created a power vacuum. Several crew members competed for leadership, fragmenting what had been a unified organization. Within 2 weeks, Trent's crew had splintered into 3 smaller groups, each controlling less territory and influence than the original. Marcus watched these developments with careful neutrality. He had not caused Trent's downfall directly, but his resistance had weakened Trent's position enough that when official scrutiny arrived, the structure collapsed. Raymond observed the changes with quiet satisfaction. "You changed this place." I just refused to let it change me. Same thing. The remaining months of Marcus's sentence passed with relative stability. The yard operated under a new equilibrium. Carlos maintained his influence over Cell Block C. The fragments of Trent's organization competed for scraps of territory, and Marcus's loose network of independent inmates grew slowly, attracting men who valued autonomy over protection. Marcus spent his time reading, exercising, and learning. He taught Danny basic self-defense techniques, empowering the younger man to stand on his own. He played cards with Wallace, absorbing decades of prison wisdom. He maintained his partnership with Raymond, building a friendship based on mutual respect rather than necessity. 3 guards noticed the change in Cell Block D. Violence decreased. Extortion schemes collapsed. The constant tension that had characterized the yard for years gradually dissipated. They did not understand exactly what had shifted, but they recognized that something fundamental had changed. On a cold morning in March, 5 months after his arrival, Marcus was called to the warden's office. This was unusual. Most inmates completed their sentences without ever speaking directly to the facility's highest authority. The warden was a woman in her 50s named Patterson. She had run Riverside Correctional for 8 years, managing 3,000 inmates with a reputation for fairness tempered by firmness. She gestured for Marcus to sit. "I have been reviewing incident reports from Cell Block D," she said without preamble. "Violence is down 30% since September. Extortion complaints have dropped significantly. Guard assaults are at a 5-year low. You know anything about that?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I know the yard dynamics have changed." "Changed how?" "Men have options now. They do not have to join crews or pay tribute to survive. That reduces tension." Patterson studied him with sharp eyes. "You created those options. I just refused to accept the old system. Others followed that example. You fought Booker. You fought Trent and his entire crew in the cafeteria. You orchestrated a confrontation that led to Trent's transfer. That is not passive resistance." Marcus said nothing. Patterson leaned back in her chair. "I am not here to punish you. Frankly, you did my job better than I could have. Trent had been a problem for 3 years. Multiple investigations never produced enough evidence to move him. Then you arrived, and within a month his organization imploded. I did not plan that. Maybe not. But you were the catalyst. Now, I have a question. You have 13 months left on your sentence. How do you want to spend that time?" Marcus considered the question. "The same way I have spent the last 5 months, reading, exercising, staying out of trouble." "That is not what I mean. You have influence now. Men listen to you. You could help us maintain order, work with administration to keep the peace. There are benefits to cooperation." Marcus understood what she was offering. Become an informal liaison between inmates and guards. Use his influence to support the institution rather than challenge it. In exchange, receive privileges and protection. "With respect, I decline." Patterson raised an eyebrow. "You are turning down an opportunity most inmates would kill for?" "I am not interested in power or privilege. I just want to complete my sentence without compromising who I am." "And who are you?" Marcus thought about the question. "Someone who believes independence is possible anywhere if you are willing to pay the price. Someone who thinks authority has to be earned, not imposed. Someone who refuses to submit just because submission is easier." Patterson was quiet for a long moment. "You are an idealist. That is dangerous in a place like this." "Maybe, but abandoning ideals is more dangerous." She nodded slowly. "Finish your sentence, Marcus Chen. Stay out of trouble. And maybe when you leave here you will take those ideals somewhere they can do more good." The meeting ended. Marcus returned to Cell Block D, processing the conversation. The warden had recognized what he represented, a challenge to the traditional power structure. But rather than suppress that challenge, she had acknowledged its effectiveness. That afternoon in the yard, Marcus sat with Raymond, Danny, and Wallace. They were discussing nothing important, just passing time. But the quality of that time had changed. They were not looking over their shoulders. They were not calculating angles of attack. They were simply existing without constant fear. "You know what I realized," Danny said. "Before you got here, I spent every day scared. Scared of Trent, scared of his crew, scared of showing weakness. Now I am still in prison, but I am not scared the same way." Wallace nodded. "Fear is a tool. Trent used it to control people. You showed us we did not have to be controlled. Marcus shook his head. I did not show you anything. I just lived according to my principles. You chose to do the same. That is the point, Raymond said. You gave us permission to choose. That is more valuable than protection or status. The seasons turned. Spring became summer. Marcus's network grew to include 15 inmates across 2 cell blocks. They did not call themselves a crew. They had no hierarchy, no territorial claims, no collective identity beyond shared values. They simply supported each other in maintaining independence. Carlos approached Marcus one afternoon in July. I wanted you to know something. What you built here, it is spreading. Cell Block B has inmates forming similar networks. Even some of my organization are questioning why they need formal structure when informal cooperation works just as well. Is that a problem for you? Carlos smiled. 5 months ago I would have said yes. Now I am not so sure. The prison is calmer, guards are less aggressive, life is easier for everyone. Maybe your way is better than mine. They are just different ways. Neither is universally right. Spoken like a true philosopher. But philosophy aside, you changed something fundamental here. When you leave, that change will remain. Marcus completed his sentence on a grey morning in November. 13 months had passed since that first day, when Trent predicted he would not last a week. He walked through the yard one final time, noting the changes that had become permanent. The wait area was still there, but it was no longer exclusive territory. Inmates from different blocks worked out together without tension. The card tables hosted mixed groups, men from different backgrounds playing together without hierarchy. The southern buffer zone had been reclaimed, filled with inmates who simply wanted neutral space. Raymond, Danny, and Wallace walked him to the gate. No speeches were made, no dramatic farewells, just quiet acknowledgement of what they had built together. What will you do out there? Raymond asked. Marcus looked at the world beyond the fence. Apply what I learned in here. Find places where people are being crushed by unjust systems. Show them that resistance is possible. Sounds dangerous. Probably, but so was refusing to pay Trent. They shook hands one final time. Marcus walked through the gate into freedom, carrying with him the lessons of the yard. That independence was possible even in the most controlled environments. That resistance against unjust authority could transform entire systems. That one person standing up could inspire others to do the same. Behind him, the yard continued its daily rhythms. But those rhythms had changed. The laughing bullies who once predicted his failure were gone, transferred or transformed. The men who remained understood something they had not known before. That submission was a choice, not a necessity. That dignity could be maintained even in degrading circumstances. That sometimes the most powerful act of defiance was simply refusing to accept the world as it was presented. Marcus Chen had lasted more than a week. He had lasted long enough to change the place that was supposed to break him. And in refusing to break, he had proven that the human spirit could not be extinguished by walls and wire and violence. It could only be surrendered. And surrender was always a choice. The gate closed behind him. The yard continued without him, but it would never be quite the same, because he had shown them what was possible. And once people know what is possible, they can never fully forget. That was his true victory. Not in the fights he won or the confrontations he survived, but in the minds he changed and the courage he inspired. The bullies had laughed and said he would not last a week. In the end, they were the ones who broke. They were the ones who begged for mercy from the system they thought they controlled, because they had encountered something they did not understand. A man who valued his principles more than his safety, who would rather face destruction than compromise his identity, who understood that some things were worth more than survival, and in that understanding, he had found the only freedom that truly mattered, the freedom to choose who he would be, regardless of where he was or what threatened him. That freedom could not be taken. It could only be given away, and Marcus Chen had refused to give it away. The yard had tested him. He had tested the yard, and in that mutual testing, both had been forever changed.